coming as I do from a mix of art practice and music cultures and festival running, and now working with big institutions, the Smithsonian at the moment, this sort of sense that where does the street or folk culture, street culture, this sort of street in a sort of not in a loose sense, the market and then the institution, those used to be very separated, and we would see that the street and folk culture would be commoditised by the market. We would use the language of capture, as if the market captured this and made it inauthentic. And then we talked about the institutions being separate from the market. And this is not the case really anymore. And so all those calls to some innate quality, this sort of sense of quality art, this sense of authentic art, doesn't play as cleanly as we think it does. And I think our institutions that call on that sense of quality are calling on it in a very pre-global sense and a pre-internet sense, and a sense that somehow they are separate, they exist separately in separate spheres. And we know this to not kind of be the case at all, and we've seen this particularly, I would say perhaps initially in music. I had some very good discussions with Michael from Detroit Radio about music and folk music and electronic music and hip hop and these sort of things that bubble up and then exist. And what is the role of the institution to engage with them, or to perhaps create space for them, and realise that by doing some activities that they do, they actually close space down. And by making claims to a particular sense of quality and value, they actually close down the opportunities for these cultures to exist. I would also say, having done a lot of work before I joined the museum and library and heritage media world in subcultural theory, that this pre-internet was reasonably clear-cut, that youth subcultures existed and people had identities, and they would shape those identities, and those identities would be oppositional frequently. But post-web, people play multiple identities simultaneously, and so these clear-cut distinctions, even within the marketplace, are very difficult now. And we see this in the fragmentation of music, which is super exciting. There's more fabulous music production than ever before, but the total volume is not in singular verticals. It's now spread across many niches, and this is incredibly difficult for the established forms of market, record companies and the like to deal with their structures. But similarly, it's difficult for the institutions that museumify these later on. Museum of X music or the Museum of Y culture. I don't think museums should play that role, and I don't think the institutional role should be to seal these in boxes in the showcase, the vitrine. These and everything is living culture, and I think this is where it gets kind of interesting. That we need to be hyper aware of the power inherent in claiming quality around things, who gets to make those claims and why. The other thing around while I'm using the word hyper is that I think that there's a hyper-localism going on and a hyper-globalism going on, and these are pulling at each other, but they both coexist. And so, how can institutions work at a hyper-local level with a local community and create value and meaning and experience for and with that local community, but also exist aware of the hyper-connected global space that they also exist in, and ways of connecting those institutions to others around the globe.